truth, authenticity, these are powerful words. What do they mean? How do you know that you're showing up as an authentic person? We're going to be talking about that. And what I'm excited about this the most is that when I first discovered that I was being inauthentic for the first 51 years of my life, and I realized how to step into authenticity, how do I discover who I truly, truly am? And then once I started showing up as that person, my life changed dramatically for the better. So I'm super excited to talk about this topic. We're going to bring in one of our authors, Emiliana, and we're going to be talking about authenticity, showing up on camera. How do you show up authentically? How do you show up as yourself wherever you are in life? So stay tuned. We will be right back. Hi, my name is Linda Sunshine West. I'm the founder and CEO at Action Takers Publishing. Our mission is to empower 5 million women and men to share their stories with the world to make a greater impact on the planet. One of the ways we do that is through our collaboration books, where people come together, share one story so that we can create a collaboration of a topic that is something that is of interest to everybody. So one of our authors today is Emiliana Molina. She is in this book called Leadership Unveiled. And in this book, we have women that are, women leading with impact, sharing their messages, their stories. And Emiliana, I'm excited to talk to you today because as we got started this morning, before we went live here, we were talking about authenticity. We were talking about, the truth, showing up as your truth, and you're voicing yourself and getting on camera. These are all things that for me, I didn't even discover any of these things until age 51 is where it changed my life. So before we get started, why don't you share with everybody who you are and what you're all about?
Awesome, Linda. Thank you so much. I'm so excited to be doing this and so excited to be here with you and sharing my story. I started my career in psychology, actually. And then 6 months into my bachelor's degree, I realized that, I loved hearing about people's deep, vulnerable processes, but I didn't want to sit in a room just listening to them. And I stumbled upon a journalism room. So like the journalism studio at Florida Atlantic University. And I saw the on-air logo while I was walking past one of the hallways, and I walked in and I saw them recording a news show. And I was like, what is it? Like, I want to do this, And so I started looking into it. I ended up joining their TV station. It was called Owl TV News. And I began as an assistant and quickly moved up the ladder as a news director for the student-run television station. Did my master's in communications. And then I went on to do my my bachelor's in communications and went on to do my master's in the science of journalism at Medill School of Journalism in Northwestern University in Chicago. I quickly, graduated from that program, earned a really important scholarship from the White House Correspondents Association in 2016, where I was recognized for my work as a student in politics and business reporting. And after that, I landed my first job as a news reporter and a news anchor on Univision in Washington, D.C., and 2 years later moved up to become a White House correspondent covering Barack Obama's administration and Donald Trump's administration as well. And in 2020, I realized the toll that the news industry was taking on me and how stressful it was. And even though it was a dream come true and I checked all the checks for success and all the dreams, I realized I no longer wanted to communicate in those ways. I felt like I was communicating from a space of fear-based control and manipulation. And, there was very little space for authenticity. And that's when I began my journey to a more authentic version of myself, to a more authentic purpose and mission in life. I ended up quitting, began my own podcast, The Awakened Journalist, and began on-camera coaching as well to guide people to become their most authentic selves on camera.
Well, that's awesome. I love the journey because first, you're doing psychology and then did you just happen to walk by this room, and then it jumped out at you. And if you hadn't walked down that path, you would be in a different direction, which I think is a great metaphor for life, just in general, is because we're walking down the path we're walking down right now. And then we meet somebody who introduces us to a new idea, a new concept. And the next thing we know, we're going down a different path. And that's exactly what happened, with and for me, back in 2015. And so, first of all, before we go on with your more of your story and what you're doing today, is how did that feel to be like, oh my gosh, I'm working at the White House as a correspondent? Did you go into the correspondent room or whatever it's called, where they did all the questions and the
press room?
The press room. Oh my God. Tell us a little bit about that. I hate to take you back to a time that really wasn't the best, but let us hear a little bit about that, because I've never spoken to anybody who's actually worked in the press room. It's really sounds cool.
Absolutely. And to be honest with you, it was very stressful, and though it was also a lot of fun. And it really was one of the best times in my life, even though it was a very high stress, high impact kind of society world that I was living in, and I didn't have a social life as well. So, but I'll take you back to the first day that I walked into the White House time. We have to get a background check. Obviously, Secret Service takes a full month minimum of doing a background check to make sure that you're able to walk into the White House. And as I was going through security, once I got approved for the background check, I just remember feeling the excitement of like, oh my gosh, I can't believe I'm doing this. Like, my parents are so proud. I'm, making the American dream happen, because we're originally from Colombia, from Medellin. And I moved to the States when I was 9. And as soon as we got past, my photographer and myself at that time, past the security service, kind of patrolling area, we walk straight into Pebble Beach Drive, which is normally where the beast drives in to drop the president off at the White House.
Is the beast the car? Is that what you're?
The beast is the car. Yes.
Okay.
Yes. The limousine that the presidents travel in.
Okay.
And so I'm walking on Pebble Beach Drive, looking at the White House, and I'm getting ready to go do my first live shot. And my hands were shaking, my hands were sweating. Even though I had a lot of experience on camera, this was a first for me, and it was extremely exciting. And just walking past all the tents where all the other news stations are. I mean, all the national networks were there: Reuters, Associated Press, Univision Network, Telemundo, NBC Network, etc. And we set up our spot. And we set up our camera facing the White House, and I go on air. It was great. It was very successful. And after I'm done, I just remember tearing up and kind of like sitting with myself and my photographer and showing him like, my hands are shaking. I can't stop shaking. It's so much excitement, so much energy. And I can't believe that I'm here. I can't believe that I made it. Like, this was never a dream for me until I made it to Northwestern University, and they kind of opened the doors to show me that was a possibility. It's one of the best schools in the nation in journalism, if not the best. I mean, Columbia and Northwestern are usually battling for first place in journalism. And it was like one of those things that somebody has to show you that is possible for you, so that you can believe that it's possible for yourself. Because otherwise, I never would have even dreamed of becoming a White House correspondent. And so just being there and sitting there and kind of acknowledging like how far I had come and how hard I had worked to make it there was a huge deal. And it was very exciting.
Yeah, that's amazing. I love hearing that journey there, because as you mentioned, the possibility. Oftentimes people will say, where do you see yourself in 5 years? And I realize that when we answer that question, we're actually limiting ourselves from the possibilities, because I don't know who I'm going to meet tomorrow. I have no idea what door is going to be open that I'm going to have the opportunity to walk through. And so I don't like to limit myself to what I can see today. So that's just a question that I myself choose not to answer anymore, because the possibilities are limitless. They really are. Like, you see these people, you've seen those people, at the press room, and you're in journalism, you're doing this work, you're working on political stuff already, and then I'm sure you've seen them, and you never just like thought, I wonder if I could be there, until somebody introduced you to that opportunity or that idea. So I love this. Is so amazing, the journey you've gone through, and you said yes. You said yes. You didn't allow whatever fears you may have been experiencing stop you, but you said yes to those opportunities, and they just kept showing up. So when you worked in the White House then for how many years?
So I was a White House correspondent for 2 years and a journalist for about 7 years.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. I could see how that could
be the last year of Obama and the first, 3 years almost, the first 2 years of Trump.
Okay. I could see how that could wear you down. I mean, I see the people doing all the different programs. Nowadays, though, what I'm finding is it seems that maybe as many or close to as many viewers are watching all this stuff on YouTube, and watching not just people who are in journalism, but watching regular everyday people who are like, I'm going to cover this. And I'm like, there's this one guy I've been watching since the election, and he's gone from like 50,000 followers to now almost 1 million in less than a year.
That's
in less than a year. Yeah, because he's reporting really well, right? And so it's interesting, because you did mention how you couldn't be authentic in that environment, but with the advent of YouTube and all that's out there nowadays, we can show up as ourselves. So how do we do that? How did you yourself step into your authenticity, being on camera, and how was that? What was that move like for you, to going from the White House to now I'm doing my own thing, and now I'm going to train other people how to step on camera, how to show up authentically, how to do this? Like, what was that transition like for you?
Yeah, thank you. That's a beautiful question. And before I answer that, I want to give you a fun fact, because I know you also asked about how was it walking into the press room, where all the journalists get to ask the PIOs, the public information officers, all the questions. And it's interesting because oftentimes there's rats in the press room, Linda. So there's sometimes, this is
not people. You're not talking about human rats, right? You're talking about
actual
that too.
Rats. The irony, right? The metaphor. Yeah. But we're all cramped up in there because it's so tiny. We don't fit. Like, some of the journalists are working in cubicles where it's like this small. It's only themselves and the computer that fit. And since it's such an old room, there's sometimes rats that kind of roam around. So you'll see the journalists occasionally like, and everyone's jumping on the chairs, like trying to get out. And
oh my God.
It's kind of really funny and chaotic, but
just like a cartoon. Oh, wait, before you answer my question there, why don't you share with us your thought? Because, this year, it has been opened up now to regular people who do have podcasts, people who do have YouTube channels that are reporting, what's going on in politics. And so the press room is packed. It's like just like so packed in there. But what's your thought of them opening it up to regular people who are not like at the big different reporting companies?
I think that is a great opportunity for expansion on communications and new media, right? Because we are seeing that the news industry and local news is dying and transforming as we know it. And podcasters and influencers are kind of becoming experts in particular topics and really learning to communicate from experience on whatever it is that they choose to communicate on. So I do believe that this is, in a way, expansion of freedom of expression, even though as it's been opened up to podcasters and other influencers, I know that the administration has also shut down newsrooms like the Associated Press. And so those aspects of it, I don't agree with. It's like, if we're going to give everyone the opportunity, then let's, still have the traditional news outlets, and let's include the new media, which is the podcasters, influence, etc. With that said, though, I do feel like this is a huge opportunity for a new way and a new path in communications, and it's a big deal.
Yeah.
So I do agree with what's happening to a certain extent.
I do too. I think I agree with you on the whole thing of the AP and all that stuff. So,
Yeah.
okay, well, let's go then into your moving out of that type of environment. You made a decision. You said, this is not for me anymore. It's very stressful. This is not the kind of stress I want to have on my life, and so I'm going to do something different. Let's talk about that transition out of that into what you're doing today.
So it was, as I'm sure it was for you, 10 years ago when you were 50, it was very painful. And it involved a lot of personal deaths and rebirths, allowing myself to change. And change can be very difficult sometimes when we don't want to face certain parts of ourselves because we're so afraid of facing those parts of ourselves. And, what I recognized in finding my own spirituality too, because I believe that is truly what has given me a lot of faith to move forward and to find my path and to find my way and to find my authenticity, is that there was a space in time where I recognized and I looked at myself in the mirror, and it was kind of like I understood at a deeper level the psychological impact that traditional news outlets have in the way that we communicate. And it almost was like, I feel like life was showing me, like, the way that you're communicating, this is how it feels in the body. This is how it feels in the psyche, in your psychological field, in your thoughts. And it's almost like a violation of your subconscious and unconscious minds. So it's like the words and the catastrophe and the fatalities are penetrating your subconscious and violating it in such a way that it creates secondary hand trauma. And I'm no expert in psychology. I'm no expert professional in any medical field. However, I was a journalist and I experienced it firsthand. And I know that oftentimes from watching the news or watching B-roll that would come into news stations from, for example, school shootings or massacres or homicides, etc., did create secondary hand trauma and a lot of anxiety and oftentimes PTSD as well. And a lot of journalists become numb to their own emotions and their own sensations because what we're covering, or what we were covering in a daily basis, is so difficult and so traumatizing that in order for you to do your job, you kind of do have to become desensitized. And in one of the conversations with my psychologist, this was back in 2021, she brought to my attention, like, I think that you shut off your emotions. Are you ready to turn them back on? And that's when I was like, I felt overwhelmed. And I said, yeah, okay, I'm not sure, but yes, it sounds like this is something I want to do, even though I can feel that it's going to be excruciatingly painful. And that I'm going to have to face the reality of a lot of the things that I was covering. And in fact, it was very painful. And I understood, the level of the tragedies that I was covering at a deeper level. And then that's how the Awakened Journalist was kind of born, because I said, okay, if I was in this much pain and covering this much pain, and I didn't even realize that I was in that much pain, how can I then now bring more joy to humanity? Because it is what I needed in that space and time. How can I gift that to others? And so I created the podcast, The Awakened Journalist, where we do conscious journalism for the good of humankind. So I focus on telling and sharing empowering stories and giving people tools to kind of allow themselves and give themselves permission to transform themselves and find their authenticity. And that's also how the workshops, Voice Your Heart's Truth on Camera, were also born. Because I was in a space where I was oftentimes told how to dress, how to speak, how to follow an editorial line, I now guide people to, what do you want your editorial line to look like? What is your essence asking of you? What is your heart wanting you to communicate? And then from that space, I guide them to be on camera.
That's so important. So important for us to know. Even just you asking that one question, right? What do you want? how many people have a hard time coming up with an answer to that one simple question? And a lot of times when they come up with the answer, it's probably most likely a topical answer, one that they haven't really thought about like deeply. Like, what do I want? What do I want out of my life? And so that's a question that I think it's important. Like, you're listening here right now, is to ask yourself that question. Ask it every day until you really truly discover what that is, and think about it from a deeper level, instead of just like a topical, like, oh, I want money. Think about it like, why do you want the money? What do you want to do with it? And what's the purpose of having this certain amount of money? So there was something you mentioned. You mentioned the violation. And what came to mind for me was how we violate our own minds. There's a saying that I'm my own worst enemy. I mean, I've said it to myself many, 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 too many times. And I've become my own best cheerleader because I realized that I was my own worst enemy. I was violating my own mind, so to speak, And so I'd like to talk about, how do we come out of that place of beating ourselves up to this place of believing in ourselves? And because I know one of the things you talk about is feeling seen and feeling heard. Like, how do we get to that place where I think a lot of us are living in that life where we're kind of like robotic, doing what people told us to do, and we start off that way in life, is because we're not self-sufficient. We do need help. We do need help learning how to dress ourselves, how to brush our teeth, right? So there are people who are telling us what to do for so many years, and then we believe that to be our truth. Whatever they're saying, whatever they're doing is the truth in our lives. But we get to that place of like, where at what point do I finally decide what the truth is and what my truth is? So let's talk about that, the truth. What is the truth versus what is my truth?
Oh my gosh, absolutely. What a great question, Linda. And you're right. As humans, I truly believe that we have two main core wounds. It's fear of being seen and fear of being heard authentically, exactly as we are. And from that space, feeling accepted or loved unconditionally. And so that is my main intention when I guide people to voice their heart's truth on camera. Like, how can I hold such safe space for you to reveal your vulnerability and your soul to me, and express that truth in a space where you feel safe, so that you can then feel empowered to continue going out there and communicating that truth. And I don't know if you listen to Brene Brown.
Sometimes.
Yeah, she speaks a lot on vulnerability and shame, and how the new leaders in this new age are truly the ones that are leading with heart and with vulnerability, like allowing for ourselves to show the humanness and the full spectrum of who we are and our mistakes without fear of being judged. Because at the end of the day, if I love myself, if I accept myself, if I know that I'm acting from a space where my intentions are pure, then it doesn't matter what anyone else says, thinks, or does. It matters how I feel with myself. And so that, to answer your question of how do we oftentimes violate our own minds and our own energy, or our own essence and our own authenticity. And this is something that I, till this day, still struggle with sometimes. And I'm actually working through a lot of self-betrayal right now, because I've noticed that I've fallen into certain people-pleasing dynamics where I am saying yes to things that I don't have the space for, and I am prioritizing other people as opposed to prioritizing myself and my needs and my entrepreneurship or my home or my, whatever it is I need to do to make sure that I am succeeding in my business and in life. And so that is one way in which right now, in this present moment, being fully vulnerable with you, I am violating my own essence in a way. And it's a harsh word to say. And also when we sit with it, it's kind of beautiful, because you then go into a space of, okay, if I'm violating myself right now, and maybe, I don't know, I went to work and I had an issue with someone where I was feeling like that person was violating my space, how can I check myself and say, this person is simply mirroring where I am violating my own energy, and where now I recognize it's my self-betrayal because I'm not prioritizing my business or myself. And so you kind of start to see reality very differently. And you start to see that people surrounding you or in your life are simply showing you things about yourself and your subconscious that are coming to light and are asking you to see them, to honor them. And it's simply spaces in yourself that are just asking for more love. Like my self-betrayal or my self-violations are literally just asking me to love them and to accept them. And then from that space, give myself full permission to, okay, I'm exhausted. I don't want to betray myself anymore. I want to prioritize myself. How can I do this differently? And sometimes we don't know. Sometimes we don't know how to do things differently. And it takes us seeing somebody else, or like you were saying, coming full circle, right? Somebody showing us that new door, that new possibility that we never even imagined for ourselves, for us to recognize, oh, that's how I can do it. That's a path for me. And so I think that's a big deal when we recognize that.
Yeah, it's so important. I like to say, it's our vulnerabilities that are like our vulnerability is our greatest strength, actually. So when we show up from a vulnerable place, what we do is we invite others to also show up from a vulnerable place. And actually, what you reminded me just now is I had a situation just recently where I wanted to do something. It was for my birthday. So I wanted to do something for my birthday. And my husband in the morning, I'll just share this scenario so people can kind of get it. So in the morning, my husband said, what do you want to do for your birthday? And I was still sleeping when he asked me, because he works at like 4:30 in the morning. And then when he came home, I had an answer. So all day long, he's at work. And then when he comes home, he has an answer too, but his answer was different than mine.
Yeah.
And so when I said my answer, he goes, "Oh, I thought you wanted to do this instead, And I looked at him and said, "Okay, we can do that, And I was pouting at that point. Okay, like I do pout every once in a while. I get over it pretty quickly, but I was pouting. I'm like, I want my way, I want my way. But he would rather do this, so we'll go ahead and do that. And then it dawned on me, because I decided to walk because it was close where we were going. I said, I'll just walk and you drive, and then we'll drive home together. And as I was walking, I'm so glad I did this, because as I was walking, I was asking myself, why did I allow myself to have him control what I was doing when I already knew what I wanted to do? Right. So my people pleaser kind of showed up in this situation, and it just, I just like started beating myself up in my head. And then I said, no, just learn from this. And next time, don't let that happen. And so I think it's important for us to recognize the situation. It was a sort of like, so to speak, trigger in a way that he triggered me to have an automatic people pleaser response, but it's nothing that he did. This is my personal opinion. It's nothing that he did or said. It's how I interpreted what he did and said. And it's my action or inaction regarding that situation. I'm responsible for me. He's not. If he didn't want to go, I could have just said, I'll go by myself. I had that as an option. So anyway, I share that because I think it's important for us to look at situations that are happening in our lives in the moment and to say, how am I playing a role in this? There's so many triggers out there that can affect us all in negative ways, but we can also look at those triggers and say, how did I play a role in being triggered? And I think that's kind of what you're saying is like, talking about our when we're younger or different things that happen in our lives, we do have control over those. We can allow the trigger to be bad or good. It's up to us.
Exactly. And I love the question and I don't think I fully answered this, but the question of what's your truth and what's my truth, right?
Yeah.
And what I've come to discover on this path too is that there's different layers of truth, right? Because what triggers you is probably different than what triggers me. And the way that you perceive the trigger is based on your personal experiences in your childhood. And same for me. So the way that I oftentimes work with truth is like, okay, what is my emotional truth? What did I feel? What is my physical truth? How did I act? What is my mental truth? What did I think? What is the energetic truth? Like what am I perceiving energetically that's not being spoken? It's like that elephant in the room, right? Everybody feels uncomfortable, everybody knows it, but nobody's saying anything or doing anything about it. And the triggers for me, the way I see them now, it's like they're activations. They're essentially asking us to bring more love to that space that's feeling uncomfortable. And we all have the tantrums. Like we all have that inner child that throws a tantrum, and that, and it's essentially we're asking for more love, maybe in a way that it's like screaming for love, and maybe sometimes it's not the best way, but at the end of the day, it's a cry for love. So when I go into my inner child tantrums, because I also have them, Linda, I also get over them very quickly. I kind of just like find myself like begging for love a little bit, like, oh, like I'm so mad, but asking for love and asking for those parts of myself to be loved. And it's really interesting because I've also learned to support me shifting out of those triggers and that inner child tantrum to use humor. And sometimes not a lot of people get it, but I love making fun of myself and making fun of the situations. And I feel like that creates a shift immediately. And the people that are speaking your same language and are in your same frequency get it and transmute it immediately with you as well. And then the trigger's gone. And it's so beautiful to witness. And then you just kind of open yourself up to more expansion and to more fun in life. It doesn't have to be heavy. It doesn't have to feel hard. It can be fun, and it can be joyful to navigate those triggers and the uncomfortable truths.
Yeah, it can be fun to navigate the triggers. Yeah, I like that. It really is, especially if you look at it on the other side of it, right? Just the other day, a lady sent me a message, and then she sent an email came to me. She sent me this email, and then 10 minutes later, she sent another email, and it said, "I'm sorry, I didn't mean to offend you." And I never responded to her email. But when I read her original email, I just laughed. I thought it was funny. I wasn't offended in any way, shape, or form. That was her coming from her, right? That was her thing that she has to deal with.
Yeah.
Because for me, I saw the humor in what she sent, but she saw it as possibly triggering me or offending me. And I think today we're so worried about offending people that we don't show up as our authentic selves. And it can be sometimes scary, I think, to show up as your authentic self, because you don't know how other people are going to view you, especially if you're talking about I don't really talk about politics, but since you come from that background, in the political world today, it's such a divide that if you are on the opposite side, then you can be attacked. I'm literally attacked physically, and so for me, I don't ever talk about, my political, unless somebody else has already told me what theirs is. And then I'll be like, okay, I feel safe in this environment.
Yeah.
But I think that's so bad. I think it's so awful that we have this situation going on in the world that we have to be fearful of our lives to speak the truth, our truth. What do you think about that?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, even as we speak, I have a lot of friends that are still in Washington, D.C. And, I'm sure a lot of people are aware, Voice of America, which was the United States run news organization, was basically shut down, and a lot of the journalists were fired, and a lot of them are facing deportations, and a lot of them are my friends. And so I'm witnessing them going through this very difficult situation that is kind of unheard of in the United States. And it's kind of an attack to freedom of the press to a certain extent, even though in other areas, I do see where the administration is opening up freedom of press as well to like the new media. And I think that we're navigating very difficult times. I'm on the same page as you are. I'm actually very neutral, and I'm even registered as an independent. So I take the best from all parties. And I do feel that it's extremely important for us to create a safe space to have these uncomfortable conversations, because at the end of the day, our common interest should be the well-being of all, right? We should be striving for peace as much as we can. And yes, you're entitled to having radical opinions And though, as you have them, respect other people's truth,
Right.
you know? And it goes back to the email that you received. Like, this person that sent you that email felt like she may have offended you. That's her truth. Why? Probably because the intention that she sent the email with, she later realized, like, oops, may not have been the best intention. And then maybe she felt guilty. Who knows? I don't know. I don't know her situation. I don't want to label it,
Right.
but I'm giving an example. And you, on the other end, though, have your guard completely down because you're being vulnerable and authentic, and you just saw the email as funny, and that's your truth. Are both true? Absolutely, because it's her experience and it's your experience. And is there a supreme truth in the middle? Absolutely. If you were to talk to her about this email and ask her, hey, like, why did you feel like this might offend me? Because it really didn't. I laughed. And maybe she might go into a vulnerable space. Oh, you know what? I sent it when I was feeling this way. And then you find common ground and you find what I call supreme truth. So there's different layers to truth and different perspectives. And though I do feel that ultimately, when we have these difficult conversations in safe spaces, we can find common ground for supreme truth, and magical conversations and expansion or evolution can happen.
How important is it for us to show up authentically, especially you do work, helping people get on camera? How important is it for us to be authentic on camera, especially because we're putting ourselves out there? Like, just doing this interview right here, we're putting ourselves out there. Two people might see us, no, I don't. Hopefully thousands, which would be which is always my goal because I want the message to get out there. But how important is it for us to show up authentically as who we truly are? And then how do we discover our authenticity?
Yeah, that is a deep question. I think it's so important to show up authentically. And now that I'm doing it, I wouldn't want my life to be any other way, because I feel
Yes.
like doing anything less than showing up authentic is carrying a burden of lying to yourself. And it gets heavy and it gets overwhelming and it gets draining, and you begin to suffer because at the end of the day, you know that you are not allowing your essence to be fully expressed in the way that you came to be in life. So I don't think that there's any other way for me to live than besides being authentic. And I've noticed that the more authentic I am, the more it repels people that are not being authentic. And those that have the capacity or resilience to say, okay, wait a minute, I want whatever it is that you have that I'm not there yet. Those are the people that are going to begin to really feel alive in their bodies and feel joy in their bodies and open up to that freedom and that sovereignty, because you are choosing to embrace your essence and your authenticity. And that is where you find your gifts and your purpose in life. And it's the secret to a well-lived life as well.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and then your second question, I forgot.
Oh yeah. How do you find how do you find
How
your
do you get there?
authenticity? I guess I'm not sure exactly how to word it, but
Yeah.
yeah, that.
Yeah, I think everyone has a different path. For me, it was a very difficult life experience. I was married and I told my husband a very difficult truth. And I speak about this in the book as well. I was very vulnerable and I expressed to him that I had cheated. And, I try to be authentic and say, how can we work through this? And I'm sorry that I hurt you. It wasn't intentional. And we weren't able to get past it. So we ended up getting a divorce. But that was my path to a deeper level of truth and to facing fears of, I made this mistake. I didn't honor my integrity or my vows to my partner and to myself. And from that space, I give him the option to choose whether he wants to continue loving me in my full spectrum of my humanness and my mistakes, or to walk away. And we walked different paths, and that was my awakening to my spirituality, to finding a path of truth, to creating the Awakened Journalist. And it was a very painful experience. It doesn't have to be that way for everyone.
Yeah.
People can find their authenticity through love or through joy or through art or through their passions. I think it's very authentic to each individual, and my experience is only one in a million. But if my story serves to kind of ignite that authenticity in others, then by all means, I welcome it. And we were talking about you mentioning at the beginning of our conversation being kind of a late bloomer of finding your authentic
Yeah.
path later in life, and I don't think that's necessarily true, because the present moment is now. All we have is now. So if you choose to be authentic right now, or right now, or right now, like 2 seconds later, right now, then you are living that truth. Like, the moment is now, and it is never too late for you to start being authentic. And you can start literally again right now at 103 and 15 seconds, which is
Yeah,
now in the
exactly.
past. But I think you get
You
the
missed
point.
it. You missed that opportunity.
Exactly. You missed the 103 and 15 seconds. Now we're at 103 and 28 seconds. So you got to do it now. Be authentic now.
Exactly. Yeah. And, it's interesting because as you were mentioning the different times that we may step into that authenticity or discover it, for me, it was out of anger. It was
Yeah.
completely 100% out of anger. Like, I just hated my life. I was 51. I was just hating everything about my life except for my husband, because I love him. And I ended up working with a life coach, and she was the one who helped me to see that I wasn't living authentically. She was the one that helped me to see what authenticity is and how I could learn, like, what does authentic mean to me, and to start living that life. But it was out of my anger that created the opportunity for me to step into it. And I'm so glad that my anger wasn't clouding my judgment of seeing her opportunity, of working with her. So
Yeah.
that's another thing, is we can just block ourselves off to possibilities. And maybe there's some shame and some guilt, because when you cheated on your husband, there could have been this like tremendous shame and guilt that prevented you from taking different steps. But it sounds like you opened up. You said, this is it, this is the reality, and you decide what you're going to do with the truth. Now
Yeah.
you got to share, and then he got to make a decision based on truth. And so I think that's so powerful. And then you going on with whatever the decision was that he made, just accept it as that's the decision. From my actions, it created this kind of decision within him, and that's just what it is. It is the truth, and let's move on with life, right?
Exactly. 100%. And Linda, I love what you said about, your anger, because at the end of the day, I feel like anger is our guardian, and it's the protector of us. And it's usually protecting our grief. So underneath the layers of angers, there is so much grief. And it's, of course, how could you not be grieving, not living a life that's authentic to your essence? It's like
Yeah.
living in self-betrayal, which I was also doing, and I was also facing a lot of anger through my choices and my decisions, and et cetera, and then facing the consequences of that and grieving that. So it was a lot of painful moments, and a lot of grieving, and a lot of crying. And on the other side, though, there's so much joy waiting for you. So
Yeah.
it's beautiful. And I know you feel it too.
Yeah, definitely. And it's interesting as I think, about anger and how you could say, like, as a protector, and also anger is oftentimes we're angry with our own decisions that we've made. It's not like I wasn't angry about, as I look at it, reality is I was angry with the decisions that I made that got me to that place. That's what I was angry about. And so in stepping out of that, to be proud of myself, be happy with myself, to be excited with my life. That was a huge decision to make, and I didn't know it was going to come, but I'm so glad I took that step to do that. And I think it's so important for us to just discover who we are, discover who you truly are. And sometimes you need help doing that. Sometimes you need help. So I'm talking, it's funny. I'm supposed to keep this short, but I couldn't help it because it's such a big conversation for me. So we're talking to Emiliana Molina, and she's in this book, Leadership Unveiled. Emiliana, the title of your chapter in the book is Awakening to My Inner Truth. And we talked about that, a lot during this topic here, but I want to invite people to learn more about you or to connect with you on Instagram. Go to Emiliana Molina Fajardo, and that's Fajardo. Did I pronounce it correctly?
You pronounced it correctly. I'm so impressed.
Well, I grew up in San Diego, so I know a little bit of my Spanish, spellings and stuff. So yeah, please definitely connect with Emiliana. If there's anything that she shared with you that you're like, oh, this is awesome, I want to get to know more about her. Your podcast, why don't you tell us again the title of the podcast and where people can find it?
So The Awakened Journalist, and it's on Spotify and on YouTube. And it's really beautiful, transformational interviews and experiences. So I know that you guys will probably enjoy it.
Awesome. Awesome. And then also you have a program where you voice your heart's truth. This is to help people to get on camera and feel comfortable being on camera. Why don't you tell us a little bit about that?
Yes. So I guide people to voice their heart's truth on camera. And it's a very spiritual, transformational experience to guide you to be more authentic. And we kind of dive deep into those two main core wounds of fears of being seen and fears of being heard. And I put you in front of the camera to express your vulnerability and whatever is priority for your heart to express in that present moment. And then from that space, we kind of go and work a little bit on your ikigai, which is basically a reason for living life. So finding your mission, your vocation, your purpose, and your passion. And from that space, being able to communicate it on camera so that you become relatable, you become an authority in your field and in your industry. You build credibility with clients. You also build trust. And finally, you also generate new leads or attract new clients. And I actually have a workshop coming up in person on, I believe, May 5th and 6th. And that's actually going to be, actually, give me 1 second. Let me double check the dates.
And this is 2025. So if you're watching this in 2026, it already happened. You missed it.
Exactly. So May 2025. Yeah. And it's May 5th and 6th, that Saturday and Sunday. And it's the workshop is called You to the Power of AI. So we're going to guide you to the on-camera presence. This is going to be in Miami. And we're also going to guide you to build structures for your business and your personal brand with AI. So it's like your authentic self to the power of AI, so that you can be fully optimized in your workflow, so that you can kind of take your entrepreneurship and yourself to the next level. And it's going to be a lot of fun. We're going to do a lot of on-camera work. And yeah, I hope to see you guys there in Miami. And aside from that, I also do one-on-one coaching for individuals that want more private time on camera, and kind of supporting them in that way. They can reach out to me either on Instagram or via email as well.
What's your email?
Molina17@gmail.com.
And what was it again? The email address?
EMI Molina at 17 Molina17@gmail.com. So
Okay.
Molina17@gmail.com.
Awesome. Thank you so much for everything you're doing to help people to show up authentically. And because the thing is that the world needs more of that. We need more vulnerability out there, because there are so many people that are guarded, and living our life guarded, it can be very stressful, and it can create diseases. And so it's really important for us to be able to learn who we are and show up authentically as that person. So get out there, connect with Emiliana, and see how she can help you to show up authentically and to show up vulnerably in your space. And more importantly, get yourself on camera, because this is a way for other people to connect with you, to learn from you, and to grow from you. So having those fears, they can stop you, or they can fuel you forward. It's your decision. You get to decide what you're going to do. Emiliana, thanks so much for being here, for sharing your message, and for doing what you do to help people to be seen and be heard and get their message out there.
Absolutely, Linda. Thank you so much for your time and for your questions. It was a beautiful, beautiful interview.
You're welcome. Thank you so much. Let's hear from Amy. She's one of our authors. She had an experience working with us at Action Takers Publishing, and listen to her experience to hear how you can get your story out there, your message out there, even if you have fear.
You took the overwhelm out of the whole entire process. You said you set the guidelines, you said how many words to have. And it's like, once I sat down and started typing, it just all came out so quickly and so easily. And I loved it. And I had fear to write. And I know about that. I know about that blockage within myself, but it just was so amazing how easy the process was working with Action Takers Publishing.